I think next Russell.
Hi, Russell. Glad you could make it. I guess that was the only one. Okay.
We want to wait for Tim or just start?
Whichever you want.
Well, he was gonna call in, like,
He's got the information, so.
yeah, he should, we can go through that other stuff, he's not gonna want to talk until the end anyway. I don't think. So we might as well, get it going.
Where? Mr. Chair, you ready for roll call?
Is that Jim?
Steve, Brian, Tim.
Okay, good deal. We'll just get ready to call roll call.
We'll confuse people.
Right.
Julie McDonald. Here. Hannah Bethlehem. Here. Jim C.
Here,
Nellie Skinner. Absent.
Yeah, I know that was.
Michael Campion.
here,
Chanel McKinley. Timothy O'Connor.
Here.
Chanel, can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here, sorry.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
okay, we need to call to order, start with the consent agenda. Looking for a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. We'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying A. A, aye. Aye. Sorry, I was in Canada, just so long. Where did that come from? Looks like it's been. Okay. We'll go to hearing from the public. Open for public comment. Don't see any public on the phone. I don't think so. Anybody with the city want to do a public comment? Because you can do that too. Okay, if not. Moving on. Resolutions. So reports from city officials. Do you have a report for us, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, down in Florida. We're gonna have a lot of problems with that ice and snow up there, I know, because I was dealing with it before I left, and it's been a nightmare. And I've been hearing a bunch of other stuff, AT&T couldn't get the roads plowed that they used to get the power connected, so we got in touch with, a representative and senator, kind of got things moving. We hope that we got kind of know where with DOT, so we'll see how that works. Other than that, I hear you guys got COVID going crazy up there, they're starting to put the school on hold again, and some other stuff's going on there, so. We're just watching that to see what happens, but I should be up there in another 3 days, so we'll see. That's it for me, I think.
Okay, administrator,
So, Mr. Chairman, I submitted a written report, there's lots and lots going on, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
anybody have any questions for Brian? Treasurer.
I am sure you're recording.
Questions, sure. We'll move on to the audit manager.
I did a report, but a couple little updates. The swim meet next weekend is canceled due to this fun little uprising that's happening. Up till Wednesday, we'll be closing at 12:30 because I'm the only employee due to the uprising. What else? Oh, we got a crack in the hot tub filter. It is currently patched. But there is a new filter on the way. Problem is it's 12 weeks out. But it's been ordered, it's on its way. Hopefully the patch will hold. And I think that's it, other than what's in the report. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
Does that mean you can patch more than once, or is it?
It's in a really weird spot. It's cracked from one of the outtake ports. It's cracked right there, and was due to be replaced anyways. And so when it cracked the first time, we started hunting one and they were completely out of stock. They literally got a hold of me the day it cracked again, and I told them to just order me one now. And yeah, so 12 weeks out, as soon as right now it's holding, it's not spewing water. It was one of those, I went in the day after Christmas, back room was flooded and the hot tub was empty. And it wasn't empty on Christmas.
Wow.
So it was that quick. It's only barely dripping now, so I've got it catched pretty good, but it's not gonna hold for forever. So new filter's on the way.
There's some pretty good patch stuff out there, some of the. Some of the new stuff's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's holding. The first day I patched it, we lost like 5 gallons. We haven't lost 5 gallons since Tuesday, so.
Good deal. And the next. City clerk.
The only thing that I have to add, from my written report is, the third Thursday of the month will be January 20th, for the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Sounds good. Any questions, City clerk? EMS report, do any of those click in?
I think there might have been. Minnie, are you on the phone?
Looks not, she did provide a written report, and hopefully they can get a couple more volunteers, and the ones who are on vacation will come back without COVID.
Yeah, they have been, that has been a big concern for them, so they're on, they're making sure to follow the COVID protocol. They've transported at least 2 or 3 COVID positive patients in the last week or so. So far, we've come out good on the other end of it,
Harbor Master.
I have submitted a written report. I just add to that, Sunday night, we had a pipe fail in South Cove, under the dock somewhere. We lost 87,000 gallons of water. Caught it in the morning. So anyway, we're not gonna try to fix that anytime soon. It'll be a couple weeks. And I want the water tanks to be full so that if we something, if it happens again, that we won't be the.
Social warm up is a good, all next week, so.
Yeah, I talked with Russell Dill about that, he's worried about other breaks occurring during that warming up cycle, and so we'll just keep it off. There's not a big demand for it, and if it's shut off, then it's not us that's leaking, so. We do have, some funds in the budget to replace that water system, that's something that we'll be getting going on here later in the spring, so. But happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Was it the HDPE pipe or oak, or is it connection?
I am gonna assume that it's HDPE pipe, Mike. We've actually had some of the welds break on that HDPE pipe, which is kind of unheard of. I don't know what the problem was there. Because generally when the welds put in properly, it's like the strongest part of the pipe.
Right, that's.
So we had that happen a couple years ago at a T, and we cut the flanges off and put a repair in there. And anyway, they have a lot of pressure. They have real high pressures in the harbors. So.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron. Library. She clicked on. She does have a good report,
She did, and this will be her first staff meeting, I forgot to specifically remind her, so it may be something simple this week. I will say she did a good job up there.
RJ, you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we're ready for you, if you have anything to add to your written report.
Yeah, I'm just adding that the state technically has been down there for the past few days, doing the fiber upgrades to Axton, Elvin, and the light camp system. And for the most part, I'd say we're about 98% up and running. Still got a few issues we gotta work out. But that should happen in the next day or two, or finalize next week. I think that's about all I got to add, that's other than the written report.
Yeah, anybody have any questions for RJ?
Just a suggestion, I know this is obvious, but we know it's gonna get warm and roads are gonna be super slick, just reminding people maybe on our websites and any access we have that, you know, Saturday, Sunday are gonna be treacherous.
Okay.
I'm a copy of the recorded, I didn't get the last thing you said, they were.
Just reminding people this weekend with the warm weather, you know, it's gonna be treacherous around here.
Oh, yeah, it definitely has been, and, we've been out, trying to talk to anybody there, but it's not, but there's only so much, that you can do with certain people.
Thank you, RJ.
Well,
Public Works, you there, Russell?
yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Did not have time to submit a written report, just to let you know, we've been dealing with snow and ice, and take time to do best we can to take care of the roads. Also maintaining our water tank levels. Last week we were down to about 22 feet in the tank. A lot of people are using a lot of water this time of year, trying to keep their pipes from freezing, but and that's okay to a certain extent, but we want to try to encourage people to conserve water as well. As of yesterday, we were at 20 feet in the tank, so we are starting to gain. So that's looking good. We're hoping to get the tank pretty much filled here before this weekend. We do have some concerns about some more water line breakage as we begin to thaw out a little bit here. So I'll have my crew. I'll have two of my guys out Saturday over 1 o'clock in the afternoon to remove any kind of snow. That's not it.
Okay, great. Any questions for Russell?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add, in front of the council, a big thanks to Russell and his crew. They've been doing an amazing job with the ice and snow and the water system issues and everything else that they keep up. So they've been working hard and doing a good job for us.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
Okay, information, Victoria.
Well, I submitted a report and it was really pretty, because I put pictures, because I like pictures. And then we added, I got a call from Vanessa.
Following conference demands are available. Press pound at any time to return to the conference. To request an operator.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump back.
I did it before, I broke down. Anyway, Vanessa Richter called me and she wants to start another magic group, so we're gonna try that on, Saturdays at 7. It used to be a little earlier, I like 7. Volleyball league should start a week from Tuesday, or no, it should start next Tuesday. But we'll see, we're an island of procrastinators, therefore I only have 2, rosters turned in, but I've got like 8 people saying, oh, okay, good. So it'll be fine. They have gotten really good about helping ref and scorekeep and line judge, and it's a real fun program, a lot more. We had a lot of younger kids playing now, and I want to keep one day open gym so that they can keep practicing. We'll see where that works out. So once I do that, then they don't show up. And we're trying to get the youth and recreation center open on Wednesdays in the afternoon for kids 8 and up, and the evening for teens. And we'll see how that goes. So that's my story. I will be gone. I get a new, cataract surgery at the end of this month, so I'll be gone the 22nd until February 3rd. So but you can call me. I like answering my phone. So, oh, look. This is my big excitement. These are that's why I like working with kids, they understand me. These are the new signs that we're making. This is the first one that the school has cut out. Samantha Wilson did the design. We'll use vinyl letters on this and put the different place names, and this will be a memorial to the establishment of Craig in March 1st, 1922. That's part of the celebration for the centennial. We have a meeting on Monday and lots of great things happening. And I want everyone to share your ideas, with your pictures, with your stories, anything you need, and that's it. Any questions?
Any questions for Victoria?
I need the picture of the aquatic center too.
Karen was in Alaska.
Karen,
Karen called me, so.
okay, and are you open until 12:30?
Yep.
Until Tuesday, but not Sunday? No. Because, okay, good. All right, I'll put it on the radio. Anything else you guys have for the radio? I accidentally deleted all my interviews, so if anyone wants to talk to me at the end, I will make you a radio star. Any questions?
I just like to say, you're very good.
Yes. I'm so impressed between the school kids and Earl and Samantha. I mean, she was able to take our logo and make it something that we could cut out in metal, so I'm just impressed. It was supposed to be like a varnish color, but it worked too much, so it's gonna be shiny and pretty and we'll have to wear sunglasses.
Yeah, it was a little thin, and so when they started heating it to get it bent in, so Brian kind of bruised, he had something in the ear and said, oh, no, not breaking it.
It'll be shiny, but it'll be beautiful, it'll last for a really long time. So good. Any questions? Right.
Okay, parks and public facilities, are you there, Doug?
I'm here, I submitted a written report, and if you haven't answered any questions, we'll go ahead.
Any questions for Doug? It looked like it, thank you, Doug.
Doug, did you get my fire doors fixed? I was hoping you did chime in there. Yeah, we have a strategy to keep you happy or make you happy. That's all I can say. Yes. Yeah,
he and I have been on that, Mr. Mayor, Doug and I have been talking about that, so we'll make sure to keep you happy there.
So good, I appreciate it, so. All right, thank you, Doug. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, reading of correspondence, does anybody wanna pull anything out of there and talk about it? There's a couple of them that are pretty interesting, but Mike, what do you think about the draw? I mean, it's pretty, it's something, but it's fairly minimal.
It's very minimal, and if you look backwards 5 years, the cap that is theoretically now in place would have only been activated in 2 years. So it's the least they could have done and in a way say they did something. It's, you know, I think the best thing that you can say right now is that there's a broad awareness throughout the state of the issue. It's, you know, it's gotten a lot of press. I think there's more coming. And, you know, basically they're under a microscope right now. And so
I didn't trust any of those figures about what they said lived when they put them back overboard.
No.
That's insane.
it is.
They bring them up, they're crushed. They're not, they may sort of, but they're not doing that.
No, that's, I don't think anybody actually believes that. These numbers, they're just, I mean, a good example of it is, so in 2020, the trawl fleet, the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council raised the trawl fleet's bycatch quota for sablefish in the Bering Sea 6 times so they wouldn't go over the cap. This year, what they've done is rather than let them get to the cap and then have to raise it, they're retroactively going back and changing these things. And so the percentage of the catch shows much lower from 1 week to another. You know, I don't know how many of you are watching the trawl bycatch page on Facebook, but the guy that's running that, David Bays, has started catching that whoever is responsible for doing the weekly reporting on the catch rates, they've actually had bycatch numbers of sablefish. The percentage is what's changing. So what that shows is they're raising the bycatch cap before they even get close to it, so that they don't appear to even get close to it. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing. 1 week it was like they're at 80-some% of the allowable bycatch, and the next week it was down at, you know, and I don't know how many, I have the numbers quite perfect, but they're down like at 36 or something, which shows they're just, you know, literally changing the numbers at will. I mean, it's terrible. And it's hard, it's just hard to fathom how, you know, a management agency theoretically run on science could be doing something like that. It's just, it's outrageous, really. Anyways, it is good to see that the biggest thing I think is that there's now awareness and, you know, eyeballs on this. And like I said, I think there's more coming.
The other one that kind of caught my eye is the mental health trust land exchange. That was one of the most confusing things I've ever seen.
The use itself, the documents.
Well, the maps don't make any sense, because you can't read them. It's like, yeah, it's near not, it's like, hello.
And it is very confusing as to which roads the mental health trust is granting easement to Forest Service and which roads the Forest Service is granting to mental health trust. So
they're all color coded, but it's like, you know, they need to leave them open so people can get to the firewood for 3 or 4 years and then go back to the building. They can't just keep doing this and closing those roads and little roads. There's so much yellow cedar up in some of those closed units that's reasonably close to town and nobody can get there.
I tried to couch the comments in the letter to basically encompass all of these, keeping them open and not counting them against the road inventory. We're kind of a universal,
Right.
That's what I try to communicate to the Forest Service.
Mike, how do we get this ball, keep the ball rolling on this bycatch issue? It needs more publicity and more input from people, but I'm not sure how to keep the ball rolling and keep the attention focused on it, so they don't keep pulling this game with us. It's just a show game right now is all it is.
No, I agree. Like I said, I think there's more coming.
Look, I think the best thing that can happen is they're threatening to sue. If they sued, it opens them up. All
Absolutely.
their books could open. The best thing in the world that could happen is if they sue. Cause
Yeah,
the exchange of information that goes on when you start to sue somebody,
Yeah.
that's what we want. We want the real information. So I'm hoping they sue.
It's just grandstanding. They're not
Yeah.
going to. That would
I don't
be,
think so.
that would be
Not for that,
devastating for
not for
them.
that little business.
So that would be devastating for them.
So,
You know, and then the other thing that I will comment on, since we're continuing on that a bit, is, you know, they talked about the 2,200 jobs that were lost. 95% of those are jobs that are people that are importing from down south. I think, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think that some of them are also, you know, I don't know what the name of that term of that visa is, but you get special, you know, fisheries visas. I think some of the people are hired through that system. I mean, those 2,200 people, you know, have very little influence on the economy of
It
Alaska.
is, they're only losing a few days of the season, and somehow for them to say they lost 2,200 jobs, that doesn't add up either.
Yes.
That was another, you know, that whole thing is just a mess.
So they're just trying to crack it up tears.
well, hopefully we stay on top of it and keep the other people that are interested on top of it. Keep more publicity on it, so we open up their system, what they're doing here, what they're hiding. So it'd be nice.
Okay, so at this point, we're gonna move on to the consideration of resolutions and ordinances, and first we'll get a motion on the floor and talk about establishing the capital projects list.
So I move to approve or adopt resolution 2201. for capital projects. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt this list. What we've done in the past is look at our work, sometimes we change for 5 and 8 hour or 13 and 20. So I don't know how many people looked at it, but they're
I have a couple of questions, but none of them are just more for my information clarification. So number 2 and number 3. I was a little confused on that because would we, just in the way that my brain thinks, if we get 5 million for the fire hall, it would seem silly, because isn't this public safety building, or it doesn't also include the fire?
No, the intent of the public
Oh.
safety building is this discussion about building, building that would
Which is-
contain the police department, have room, if the court were to ever.
Oh,
move
I
back
thought
to
the
Gray.
fire hall was just be part of that as well.
There was some discussion early on, but at some point it gets really complicated.
the area has to get so big
Okay,
in
so,
order to do that.
And the intent of the public safety building is to include our police department. You know, we have state law enforcement agencies and court agencies that rent space for, you know, our station on the island, probation. You know, parole officers, the state troopers, the court system. And so part of the thought of the public safety building is to kind of have a larger jail, police department, and room for some of these other agencies if they ever wanted to locate with our police department.
no, I think that's definitely a huge project. I remember when I first joined the council, I did the tours, and I was blown away at how squeezed the police department is. I mean, they really really need more space, and it's one of those projects too, if we can expand the jail, and actually over time will pay for itself.
Okay.
So I do support that, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
And then I'm just clarifying on this, and Victoria's here, if you don't mind telling me. The power building, those are for improvements beyond, the roof is covered, right? You got the roof. The roof done. Okay, wait, but that's all covered, this is for other improvements, right?
Yeah, we look at.
I'm with you, I'm basically checking it, we were talking about the roof, right?
Yeah, the roof is wonderful.
Okay,
Now we need a new skin, we need windows,
okay, I just wanted to, click when I saw that, I was like, oh, I thought we got the roof fixed, so I wanted to make sure.
The top item to be repaired
Was the
from
roof,
that item
yeah,
has been the roof. but-
no, that, I
But
know
we
that.
managed to get that done, but there's still, as Victoria says, a lot of repairs to be done, so.
And then I had two other questions, and maybe this is because I don't know, at some point I feel like I'm dealing with fake money. So the 25 million and for the airport and the 5 million for a bike path, like I saw those two and I about fell over.
Yeah.
Are those correct numbers?
Yes, those are engineers' estimates for both of those projects. So the airport improvements, and actually, the airport improvements.
I will put, you guys hire me for the bike path for 4 million and I'll get it done for you. Not that, you know. I'm sorry.
No, the number's much bigger actually for the airport, because the airport has a long-term master plan that includes new aprons and parallel taxiways and.
Are we gonna be landing
Stuff out
like,
there.
and I don't know what they're called, but like the Alaska airline planes, I mean, that's a plane, 25 million is a lot.
You have to have more lifts if, it's not thick enough.
Yeah, but there are other problems. So our runway is just long enough. There are some problems with the approach and the pullout because of the mountains that require very specialized FAA approvals. The runway, as I understand it, the runway is thick enough to land 737, just barely long enough, but the aprons are not thick enough. And so
What are the aprons, I'm sorry.
everything off of the runway. So as soon as you
okay,
leave the runway and
Yeah.
go towards the terminals,
Okay,
all of that is apron. And none of that is thick enough to run a C-130 or a 737 over. And so there are a lot of problems. And these improvements don't necessarily bring it up to the standard of being ready to.
but is that the
land
long-term
jets.
plan, is to be able to have those, accommodate those types of planes?
I've not ever seen that unless the focus of the airport changes drastically.
Okay, and the bike path is really $4 million.
It really is. So that would take the bike path from the high school where the bike path currently ends all the way to Kawak. And it is expensive. And the primary reason that it's expensive is because there's no room on the cliffs, on the side of the cliffs. And the 4.1 million is really based on a design that would meet federal and state standards. So it's not, you might be able to design something and fit it in there at the bottom of the cliffs, which is not a good idea for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
We've had people talk about, oh, it'd be easy to go up over the cliffs. But again, it's hard for the feds and the state engineers to sign off on a design. So this $4 million design, the $4 million design essentially crosses the highway before the cliffs, and then extends out Phil and builds a whole new pathway along the water side until it gets past the cliffs and moves back to the interstate. It's a whole thing, but this project has gone through at least the preliminary engineering level, and so these estimates are engineers' estimates of cost. The 4.1 million for the bike path is what the state is using as its standard number for various programs to try this, work with the state to apply for funding for.
Okay. And then, I have my last question, and you mentioned, we've talked about this before, and I was under the impression that number order doesn't really matter. If that's just, it's just what becomes available for grant, so we don't need to discuss if 23 should be 19, like, it doesn't really matter what order they're in.
Certainly, if the council would like to see one item higher on the list than another item, that's great, but I've often mentioned that there are different pots of money out there for different things. So like the airport is a good example.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go sacrifice some other city project for airport funding, but that's on the list so that we can provide support if the FAA comes up with a bunch of money specifically for airport improvements. And we routinely go down the list depending on, project, if council gives some direction to promote one project over another throughout the year, or if we find a funding source that is very particular to one project and really doesn't apply to the first 12 projects, but maybe applies to number 13. And so we'll fit funding the projects. It's not unimportant, the order that there is, and council certainly can move them around, but that order does not, it's not like we're only going to work on the top 3 or 4.
Is it okay if I keep going?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
It's no problem.
The other thing I wanted to ask, I actually have 2 last things. One thing is just to consider if you guys agree or not, but I feel like we should have on the list somewhere that we have that area, and I don't know what it's called, it's the one East Hamilton that what I thought was a basketball court, but it's not a basketball court.
No, it used to be, it's just, well, kids still use it some, but it's all broken in because it filled, it didn't fill right.
Well, I mean, I think we should have somewhere on there doing something with that area, because it's just. Like that could be a good spot for, I don't know what exactly, but yeah, I feel like that could be a nice area, so I would like to see that somewhere on the list. And then I wanted to also get, Victoria, I'm thinking of you tonight. I wanted to get, what are your thoughts about, I think Hannah's brought this up a couple times, I think it's a really good idea, and I wanted to get your input on covering that, the gym parking lot, well, it's not gonna be parking lot, that gym. It's number 22, yeah, it's on there, but I was gonna say, what are your thoughts about?
I wrote a down for the grant 20 years ago to try to get that done. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think it'd be lovely. And then I'd like an expansion for the gym ceiling and.
Well, and it would be really good too if we put it in, if it could also go to the playground. That's what I was saying.
That's gonna be extremely difficult.
But if you could, when you did the bid, or the whatever, you could see what it cost to do that, and then if we went to there, just get an idea. What it would cost.
That whole thing over there is rotten, there's no way you can fold anything down, it's gonna take all new cement walls, all.
But would it be like a,
Right, but you have to put those steel girders into something solid. That sidewalk there is not solid, and that wall is leaning already.
yeah, that's what you're saying.
And it's, that's gonna be.
The foundation is-
And there's nothing on the other side of it.
Level it up.
That all has to be done too.
Yeah,
It's a possibility,
Is
I mean, it's worth seeing what the price is gonna be, if somebody wants to give us money, you know, whatever.
Right, I think that's everything I had, I'm sorry.
Okay, I've got a couple of notes, so I've got a couple of recommendations. on how to do that.
Anybody else have anything?
Are we allowed as staff to?
If you recognize the year.
Sure.
I did a little work on the bike path, with CTA, before they went to new projects. And seems like they kind of drop it, pick it up, drop it, pick it up. And one of the things, when I was talking to Marquita's, they on the grant funding is what Brian was saying about going up and over. She mentioned that there was some grant funding that would be available through BLM. And if they made it like an observation point, like a scenic, like they do, then a lot more money directed towards that. And she also had a special interest because she had worked with Sam Thomas, and that was the big project. And so she was more than willing to get that going and kind of help out, and so I just wanted to mention that.
But going over the top would be really nice if AT&T would love it, number one, to get that completely cleared out so they could get vehicles up there to deal with those lines. If they had a couple of them down during the storm, they had one heck of a time getting up there and deal with
And they
that.
were talking about because of the incline to do sort of switchbacks type situation.
Walk your bike up there.
I was gonna say, who's gonna like it up there, they're in better shape than me.
You go on the dancing over that little gear.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike or Hannah, you have anything? I got a couple things if you don't mind. Some things just don't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
It's when my brain works, it's like, we're spending so much money on a wood boiler. And you want to spend $500,000 running the pipes across the street from an old boiler that doesn't work. $500,000, even at the ridiculous price we're paying right now, is 146,000 gallons diesel fuel. Sometimes, these wood boiler things all look great and they're green, kind of, except for they're putting carbon in the air, which the community's never felt that way. We're not gonna get the no-bugs. We're not set up, we're gonna be in big trouble. So I'm starting to have problems investing in like $800,000 in a wood boiler that lasts for 15 years when we could have bought enough propane or diesel fuel to run the pool the whole time.
Propane cleaner.
Right, well, the problem with propane is that the BTOs don't pencil out. They look good, but the propane makes moisture when it burns.
Yes.
Which subtracts from its BTUs. That's why this thing never worked up here with the propane. That's why it costs us so much money. It's like when they did it, I told them, I said, no.
We're not going back to coal, Jim.
I got a reason, and that is like, it doesn't work. You have to figure that, those are Jason, my comments, but I don't know.
We have all this natural resources, wood and stuff around here.
But if you.
If we can burn it clean,
If you can get to it, is the thing.
get to it, huh?
And I'll just say, Jim, that there are some of the projects on this list, and that connection is one of them that were really on this list at the request of other agencies. So this DOT, it's in their interest for the airport project to be on there. The bike trail is not a project that the city has ever really actively worked on. It's been a tribe project. And so we've included it on there as in support of that project.
I like that even bike trail.
The connection of the wood boiler has been on the list really in support of the tribe's efforts in the past to connect the wood boiler to the tribal hall.
Well, the tribes are getting all the money these days, anyway. The money's everywhere. There's COVID and stuff there.
Point of order.
We have a motion on the floor, so let's go ahead and, I think it's just fine the way it is, so.
So if I may, so just a couple things to address some of Julie's comments. I would make a suggestion that we change the language on number 22 a little bit to say covered play area, city gym and daycare playground. That just gives a little room to extend that.
Yeah.
And then we can add item 24 to the list as upgrades at East Hamilton Park and Harcourt. To put that on the list as well.
Do I need to make an amendment? to Those two items or?
If you and whoever seconded agree to
We just said.
making that, that's fine.
Alright.
Yeah. If the maker and the seconder agree to it.
So, yeah, you agree, friendly amendment?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, it doesn't cost us money, but I guess we'll do a roll call vote anyway. Do a roll call vote on it.
Yes, sir. Kevin Dodd,
Yes.
Michael Pittman,
Yes.
Julie McDonald,
Yes.
Chanel McKinley,
Yes.
and Tracy.
Yes.
I mean, the motion.
Okay. It's gonna be resolution 2202, declaring January 13th, 2022 as RFA Day. Motion.
Move to adopt resolution 2202. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 2202. Any discussion?
I can just add, Mr. Chairman, they're doing a big celebration on the 13th in Keshkia. And so Tim is going to participate in that. Tracy did a great job doing a very pretty version of this resolution up. pretend to present at that gathering on the 13th, so.
We decided to start the area in January.
Yeah.
That's when it got done.
Yeah.
There were a couple of pretty interesting trips. I went over, oh my goodness.
That was my only comment.
I guess we're going to roll call on this, I would resolution roll call, so. You call it over?
Kevin Bassett,
Yes.
Michael Kennedy,
Yes.
Julie McDermott,
Yes.
Chanel McKinley,
Yes.
and Jim C.
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to, I believe, the business, oh, no, unfinished business, ARPA funds discussion is next.
This one might have a few changes before the motion, Mr. Chairman, if you like.
It said discussion, so yeah, let's
So
just discuss it first, then we'll decide what kind of motion.
we've had a number of discussions on what to do with the ARPA money. As you guys know, there's about $700,000 that's geared to come to Craig. We've got about $353,000 of that in hand, with the rest of it due sometime later this year. And so I've kind of listed out some projects to begin to earmark that money. The projects that I've listed in the memo constitute about $320,000 of that 350. We've already spent a little bit, some for some COVID supplies through EMS, and the council appropriated some funds for premium pay for the child care center. And so if the council chooses to kind of appropriate this whole $320,000, that'll leave about $18,000 left in the unappropriated in the ARPA money now. And then we'll go through a similar process down the road as the other half of both of those pots of money come in. So I would ask the council during discussion if there's any of these items that you're particularly like or particularly don't like, to remove them from the list or keep them on the list. There's nothing that says we have to appropriate all of the money now. These are just some of the top items that the council and the staff have been talking about. So I want to put these in front of the council and see what your thoughts are on these.
Didn't we already approve that event thing? I
Last-
thought we already spent that money.
The last year.
We've been talking about it, but we haven't, but yeah, and I think the council's generally in favor of it. We've had that
I
discussion.
thought we actually done it already.
Yeah.
Just when I saw it, oops.
I'm sorry if that, and maybe that direction has happened and I missed it. but-
No, I don't think we ever actually approved doing it.
Really?
I don't think I missed any meetings. I don't know.
But if the council includes that on the, whatever we approved tonight, I'll
We
start
did
working on
discuss
this.
items that we could be doing with it, and that came up as one that we liked.
Yeah.
I would say I'm in favor of doing it again, but I wanna just make sure that we promote that we're doing it. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's on Facebook or the website, just kind of like the city of Gregg. Just once again, like, so people realize, first of all, they're not gonna get this every year. You know, so then people get something, and when they don't get it, they're upset about it, so just kind of letting them know that we're doing it as a favor, and then also promoting that the city's doing something for citizens or.
And I'm happy to answer any questions on that item or any of the other four appropriation items that I can put in front of council.
Everything that I saw pretty much was in line with things that we had discussed, so I
Yeah.
really have.
We have some major work we need to get done, and we can use this money to do it, so. Everybody okay with this?
Yep.
So recommended motion. I'll move to appropriate, set aside $320,000 in available ARPA funds as shown above. Second. Been moved and seconded to appropriate the $320,000 in the ARPA funds as shown on this list. Let's just go into a roll call again, it's not mine.
Kevin Bassett,
Yes.
Michael Kinsler.
Yes.
Julie McDonald,
Yes.
Chanel McKinley,
Yes,
Jim King,
Yes.
motion passed, thank you, council.
Okay. Now we're gonna go on to appointment of Jeremy Cruz and the appointment of John Lewis and Kevin McDonald to the Current Planning Commission. And with the mayor has put these in, he's the one who basically selects the people and then we confirm.
Confirm.
Yeah.
And I asked about this 3 years ago.
There's not a problem.
Okay.
There's no money involved.
Oh.
It was a mistake,
There's no-
yeah, I mean,
there's
it'd
no-
be kind of weird if I voted it down.
I'm really worried about it the other way.
I know.
I'm worried about her, about Kevin trying to talk her into making sure it doesn't get.
Yeah, I know, right? You paid me to vote it down.
So does that mean you refuse?
What's that? No, they said it's okay.
No, she doesn't have to recuse. It's gonna go in the- That's my feeling on it, I'm sure.
I get stuck with the kids and then
Okay,
So you're looking for a motion?
yep, so make a motion.
I move to make appointments to the Craig Planning Commission based on staff recommendations and the names of appointments as shown above.
Second. Oh, and second. So it's been moved and seconded to make these appointments to the planning commission. I think this one's opening the voice well, actually. People, so. Let's see if I can say the right word. I'm not in Canada. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same sign. Aye. Yeah. Next is NC Machinery Excavator Lease Approval. Technically, we're buying it, but it's considered a lease because we're paying that over 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
And it's a lease to buy where essentially 100% of our lease fees count towards the cost of purchasing the piece of equipment.
Yeah, that was a lot of reading.
Yeah, sorry about that. I will say that our attorney had some objections to some of the language, so the opinion of council page that's in this contract was very well marked up by Bob Glasgow.
Oh,
But he did mark it up and sign it. He went back and forth with Cat's attorneys a little bit about some of the language that he didn't like. They weren't very willing to shift the language, but Bob came to the point where he was satisfied to make some pending changes to his page and sign.
and so we need to have a motion to get this accomplished.
All right, so I move to approve, or to authorize the city administrator to approve the agreement with Extant Financing NC Machinery for the purchase of a new excavator.
Okay, so moved and seconded to buy the machine from Cat. Any further discussion? Spending money, so let's go ahead and do
Actually, the money's already been appropriated, so this is the approval of the agreement.
this can just be voice. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Okay. Here's the rest. City general checking account transfer for creation that says.
Try to sum this up, it gets a little complicated. I sent an email out to the council regarding the additional environmental work driven by the government consultation between tribe and Corps of Engineers. So this extra money that's sitting in the checking account was about half of what we had intended to use for our share of the breakwater construction cost. And so I purposely, we did not put it into a long-term account because we figured we were gonna need it here this month or next month. But because the construction of the breakwater is now put off by as much as 2 years, it makes sense to move this money into an account that's earning some interest rather than just sitting in our checking account. And I apologize for being a little bit creative with the math here, but first off, our share of the environmental work is gonna cost about an extra $55,000. And the Corps of Engineers is gonna need that as soon as they have their portion of the $535,000 cost. Which if our construction money shows up in either the infrastructure bill, which we should know in the next couple of weeks, or the next appropriation bill, which needs to get passed by mid-February, then the Corps of Engineers will be ready to go to work on this extra environmental work. And so they'll be looking for the $55,000. And so first off, I'm proposing to hold back that $55,000 from what we put into the endowment fund, or what we send to permanent capital management. And then I've had some emails back and forth with the council about some of our snow problems this year, and some equipment that would have helped this year to solve. I don't know if we'll get any equipment for this year, but one of the best option after talking to staff is a new skid steer and some attachments, which would have been very useful this year for helping to clear sidewalks and parking lots. And it's also the piece of equipment that probably has the most year-round use. So we're looking at about $100,000, give or take, for a new or slightly used skid steer and the attachments that we're looking for. So I'm asking the council to hold that money back as well before we deposit this at Alaska Permanent Capital Management. At what our endowment fund has been earning, the good part about this particular process or thought process is that the earnings will, and I won't vouch completely for the stock market, but given its recent history, it's likely that the earnings will put us back in a spot 2 years down the road where we'll have that $150,000 or a good portion of it earned back. And so when we're ready to pull that money for the breakwater construction, we should be in about the same spot that we're at now. We'll also have paid for the environmental work, and we'll have the skid steer on hand and completely paid for. So it's an opportunity. Obviously, I think it's a good idea to move some or all of this excess funds into an account that's going to earn us something over the next couple of years. But I also think it's a good opportunity to take care of a couple of these other expenses if the council is willing to appropriate the funds for that. So, I'm not a financial genius, but I will try to answer any questions I can.
I don't think it's a bad idea. One question for you is the way the permanent fund is set up. Technically, it takes 6 votes to pull money out. Is there a way we can put money into that fund where we don't have to have 6 votes to get that out?
There is,
I think we need to do that. With
So-
this particular, when we're gonna start putting these extra monies in there.
And I have a couple of other pots of money identified that we haven't drawn on in a couple of years. They're more like long-term capital equipment replacement funds. And they've been sitting in, I've got one account that's got about $560,000 in it that earns us about $18 a month in interest. So I had a talk with Blake Phillips at Permanent Capital Management yesterday. And my suggestion, which I'll bring back to the council in a more formal manner, is that right now we have 2 accounts with him. We have the endowment fund, which has really strong restrictions on being able to draw the principal. And then we have the school fund, which is easy to draw, but has very strong restrictions on what we can use it for. My suggestion, and Blake and the Permanent Capital Management agrees, is that we create a third fund with Permanent Capital Management, and we structure it so that it will earn somewhere between the 2 accounts. So it'll be a little more stable than our endowment fund, but earn more than the school fund will, somewhere in that middle range. And we'll set the rules up so that it's not as restricted as the endowment fund. And my goal would be essentially to have the same type of approval that would be required for any other appropriation in order for us to draw that money. So,
That's what, I discussed this the other day.
yeah, and I've talked to, Sherry and I have been talking about this, and we had a meeting with Permanent Capital Management yesterday to talk about it. And so my plan would be to come back to the council next meeting and one after with a more formal proposal.
Yeah,
That also look good.
Hey, Jim, let me speak for a minute. I've been working with Brian on this for about 2 or 3 weeks, having him look into different options of investing that money. And to get that money working for us to where it gives us the funds to do things like buy that skid steer and fund that environmental study that we're gonna have to do now. And hopefully the interest from that money going in there will cover those programs and reimburse us. That's what we found out over the last 3 weeks. But like I said, you gotta keep that money liquid. And we're looking at somewhere around $2 to $4 million that we could probably put in there and keep it liquid, or half of that even. But that's enough money to make it work for us, and where it's making money for us, and not just sitting there making $18 a month in interest. So,
We're still sitting on a CD that right now is earning us almost zero.
right.
It's $560,000 that, I don't know what the interest rate is on it, but
It's stupid.
it's earned us about $260 a year the last couple of years on over $500,000. You know, and so it makes sense to me, especially for projects that we're not gonna constantly be going back and forth to like a checking account. We're gonna look at making a draw, you know, looking at projects a year or 2 out. It's a good place in the future to park money that we're saving for some big project that's down the road. And it just bugs me to death to have money, that much money sitting there that we're not using, not actively using, and it's not earning anything.
I agree 100%. Hold on, we'll bank and send it south. It's like,
Yeah.
it's stupid.
well, we're looking at options. It's not just the firm fund. I mean, you can look at other investments and types of doing things that are secure. At the same time, they're gonna earn better interest on what the banks are currently paying on CD or savings accounts. It's 0.1200.0 interest is nothing, and we're not gonna keep doing that. We gotta do something.
And we talked with Blake a little bit about the liquidity yesterday, and we talked with him before about liquidity in the other accounts. And, you know, probably with some exceptions, but his general feeling is that if we give Permanent Capital 5 days or a week, they can have funds moved into our checking account and ready for use. And especially for these capital projects, there's really not any situation that we're gonna not know months before we need money, how much money
Yeah.
we need.
As long as you'll do that without a penalty, you know, we don't want no penalty or interest penalties or anything like that. These are things that we need to work out with them, but I know we can get these things worked out. These guys, if they want the money, they're gonna have to play ball somehow. And I think that we hold the lever, because it's our money, so we can negotiate whatever we want to as far as terms, and whatever they'll work for us.
Right, with as much money as we have, this isn't gonna be a problem to do that, because the little bit that I have, my money's been for 5 days and I can get it back. They guarantee 3.1% a year.
Yeah.
Tax-free,
Exactly.
municipal bonds, and I know that isn't inflation, but it's better than 1/4% across the street.
And these guys have been really good to work with, you guys know this.
Well, it's everything, it's not just that.
So.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. So it would be my plan at the next couple, sometime in the next couple of council meetings to bring a more formal proposal and identify some pots of money that aren't earning us right now that could be moved in. And I may even hold off on this $1 million or whatever the council decides to move out of our checking account until we talk about whether that money should go in a more liquid account or into the long-term firm fund as well. One of the things that I want to avoid too is not to put money into the perm fund that artificially inflates it. Because that gives us that changes the 4% calculation that we're allowed to spend. I don't really want to do that. I want that to be a fairly honest.
You know, it needs to be in a different fund, because it needs to be under a different set of rules.
Right.
So I could make a motion with just these first two sentences and just drop the last sentence about transferring 1.1 million until we work out the details.
And I could bring that all back in a larger discussion about establishing this.
So you don't really need to make a motion.
We need to make a motion for the first two sentences,
It'd be helpful to appropriate.
the 53,096.
Oh.
And it just, when we make it, I'll just make it.
Right.
I move to appropriate 53,500 from the city general fund for the non-federal share of additional final work on the Craig Harbor project. I further move to appropriate up to 96,500 from the city general fund for the purchase of a skid steer and attachments.
So. Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll do the roll call.
Yes.
Michael Chapman?
Yes.
Julie Farrell?
Yes.
Robin Kelly?
Yeah. Gotta tell you that.
Jim C.
Yes.
And motion passed. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any council comments?
We all look at me.
I will say something. I think it would be a good idea to have a bit of a review of Robert's Rules of Order and appropriate conduct in council meetings. To have somebody walk in, sit down and just start pontificating. I mean, that was highly disrespectful here. I did not like it. Other than public comment, the only time people have a right to speak, unless they are, addressed and given the floor, is during public comment, and sometimes that's gotten a little bit out of hand. I think,
I'll take the heat for this one, that he obviously was,
well, yeah, no,
and I just didn't want him to have a flip out without RJ being here, because I ain't fighting with anybody anymore.
well,
Like,
that's
I
not,
apologize, it's on me for not doing it, your call on the vote was perfect,
well,
to do, and I appreciate it.
that was, way over the top, but we've had other instances of that. And I think just having, a general, a little bit of a better idea of the rules of conduct here, it just adds for a smoother meeting, a little more respectful meeting. I think it's great to allow, and we've always done that here. I've been part of council meetings for 30 years. We've always allowed the public to weigh in outside of public comments. I think that's, really good. We have the ability as a small community to provide that opportunity. We don't have to do that. And in most places, they don't do that.
No, but he's never been to any kind of meeting before, I came in years beyond.
We want to get warm.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
I see a lot of them getting warm at the CTA too, getting coffee.
Tracy would be happy to come up with something. We'll format something kind of for some of that stuff. It's fun, We'll look at it.
Okay, and the last motion. Computer,
Second.
moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say.
Good counsel.